7 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. Grab a seat, get comfortable. There are 4 pages on this agenda tonight, so hang on. Love to see how many are here in the end. We'll honor America with the Pledge of Allegiance. We're honored tonight to have Tim Ayers, pastor from Grace Church, who will offer an invocation following that. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you pray with me, please? Our dear Father, I am thankful that we can be confident that you're here with us this evening and that you're aware of the important work that will be done here tonight. We come before you knowing that what this council decides will impact the lives of many, if not all, of the citizens of Westfield. And so my prayer this evening is that you will give each member the wisdom and the insight that they will need to make the best decisions, and that tonight's session will be characterized by the kind of respect that best serves our community. I ask this in the confidence that your desire is to see that the citizens of Westfield are richly blessed with the fullest measure of your goodness. I pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Tim. Mr. President, would you like to run the meeting?
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, first item that's tonight, Kim, would you please note the presence of a quorum?
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Here.
Troy Patton,
Here.
Cindy Spojeric. Here. Scott Willis,
Here.
Joe Edwards.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. There will be one change to the agenda, which I just learned of about 5 minutes ago. Under old business, the 4th item, Ordinance 20-25, the North Point 2 PUD. This has been removed from the agenda on the wishes of the petitioner, has withdrawn that petition. So please note that that has been removed from our agenda this evening. And the APC vote on that petition will stand. Next item is the approval of the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes this evening to approve. The first item on the agenda, the approval of the minutes of the August 12th, 2022 City Council meeting. Councilors, do you have any questions regarding those minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Joe Edwards to approve and seconded by Scott Willis. By Jake Gilbert? Troy Patton? Troy, sorry. Kim, would you?
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Cindy Spojeric. Yes. Troy Patton,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of the minutes from our special August 31st, 2022 council meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Scott Willis, seconded by Joe Edwards. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes. Scott
Willis,
Yes.
Cindy Spojeric. Yes. Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. Approval of claims is the next item. That's the claims docket for September 12th, 2022. Councilors, do you have any questions regarding the claims docket for this evening? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the claims docket for September 12th, 2022?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Troy Patton, seconded by Scott Willis. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Cindy Spojeric. Yes. Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
and Jake Gilbert. Did you say yes? Motion carries 7-0.
Great.
Oh, Scott Fry.
Yes.
We're trying to move as quickly as we can, Mr. Mayor.
I know. Get it there.
All right, well, this evening, we do have one special recognition, and we're going to ask Mayor Cook to please explain that to us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. You know, some of these proclamations are fun and easy. This one is one of those ones that's tougher, because this month we're going to declare September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. We have here, I believe, Jessica Gelhert. Is Jessica here? Would you come and join me, please, Jessica? And you have somebody else with you? Okay. Yes. And you are from Sheridan, I understand. Thank you for coming to Westfield. This is a wonderful thing that you are doing, because you've suffered something no parent would ever want to go through. You had a daughter that was diagnosed, I guess, Logan, 2020. 2 years of treatment, but lost the big bad. But here you are, doing something about it. That is a proclamation in itself. Jessica is reaching out to support Westfield families in dealing with childhood cancer. And I guess some friend of yours, maybe you didn't know her before, or you did? Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, Jenna and I met because Logan and her daughter London have the same cancer.
Okay.
So that's how we got to know
You
each
didn't know each other before?
Jessica from Sheridan came all the way to Westfield and was one of the very first people that came to the door offering her support to our family when we were diagnosed, and we didn't know each other. So very special.
Wow. How do you gather the courage to do this?
There's a lot of support needed in a diagnosis like that. So just try to be there for one another.
So you're gonna do something about it?
Yeah, we're trying to.
Okay, well, there isn't, we'll do what we can.
Appreciate it.
This is just a bunch of words, but you're showing your passion by actions. That's wonderful. So, some facts here that I just learned, that cancer is the second leading cause of death in children ages 1 to 14. over 10,000 kids under the age of 15 will be diagnosed with cancer this year. I assume that's in America. Yes. 2/3 will have chronic health conditions as a result, and 1/4 are classified as severe to worse. Yes. So hundreds of nonprofit organizations undertake efforts to overcome this. Researchers and healthcare professionals are working to treat and cure. Obviously, we're not there yet, but way too many children are being affected by this, as you well know. And as I share a little bit about this with the loss of a grandchild, it changes your life forever, does it not? Yes, it does, but you're doing something about it. So therefore, I, J. Andrew Cook, Mayor of the City of Westfield, do declare this month of September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and I encourage all citizens to support this effort, and hopefully someday we'll find a cure. And for you, may we present this to you. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing.
You get it.
I know the Hoffman family personally, and their daughter London and their family has been an inspiration to countless people in this community. So this small honor, but thank you for all that you both have done. So obviously, Jenna, God bless, and London has changed the lives for many and inspired so many of us. So I just wanted to say that. It's good to see you tonight.
Thank you. This evening, we have 3 different presentations. First one will be on the 2023 budget discussion, the processes and procedures. Do we have Jeremy Lawler? Are you here this evening?
Yeah, I'm here. What would you like to discuss? I didn't put this on the agenda. I thought one of you all did. As you know, we had our special meeting last week, I believe it was. We're in the process of answering your questions and providing information. Next step is introduction of the official budget on the first October meeting, and then final approval at the second October meeting to meet the deadline of approval prior to the end of October.
Okay, great. Councilors, questions from Jeremy?
I know we discussed, did you send out the one-page report on the different alternatives for the legal fees?
I haven't yet. I'm finalizing it. It'll go out tomorrow.
Okay. And I apologize, I thought we were going to use the meeting to talk about the budget, even as just a follow-up to the last meeting that we had. If we've rectified anything, or if we've talked further about that, or even if we're talking amongst ourselves just to let the public know what we're thinking. I mean, I think that's, just an open dialogue about the budget. Just areas of concern. Obviously, I'll start. I think, and I did receive your email today. I think the city council, clerk treasurer, and the city all need to cut their budget for legal fees. I apologize to the attorneys in advance, but it's a waste to the taxpayers. I know. It's nothing personal. Or maybe it is, I don't know. But I think it needs to be cut severely. And again, I think we talked about that last time. I'd like to see that. One overarching theme that you and I have discussed, and just to talk openly about it, is I think maybe just a prudent rule on budgets would be that we don't spend, or we cap that spending to the equivalent of the revenues in the prior year. So it protects us against any downturn. Now, that gives us a $4 million gap, obviously, between the current budget and where we're at. And that's something that I would like to see worked out. Obviously, Board of Public Works, police, and fire are the first 3 things that should happen. I do want to, I know I'm going to ramble on here, and I apologize. Jeremy and I mentioned this, and I know the fire department's here. I would, and I know we can't do it this year, but I would like to research the opportunity to use ambulatory care with Riverview to reduce our budget next year in that department. Jeremy and I talked about that. I guess Lebanon does this practice as well, because I believe that a lot of our budget constraints are one of the biggest increases in the budget is the fire department. And I think that's something that we need to talk about. I did talk to Cindy Spoljaric about that earlier today, and I think we probably we're just discussing the fact that it's probably too late this year, but that's something that we need to do. I know other cities across the country do that. So in essence, they use the hospital to run ambulatory care, and it's not that the city doesn't participate in those costs, but it's not to the extent where we're covering 100% of the burden. Is that correct, Jeremy? How Lebanon's doing it?
I don't fully understand how they're doing it. I do know that I'm certainly willing, and I'm sure the chiefs are willing to sit down and talk through the pros and cons of doing things that way. I won't be remiss in saying that it would take a transition period to get there, and
I'm not proposing it for this year. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, as Cindy pointed out to me, it may take an entire year. It may take 12 months to get that going, because the county would actually also chip in as Riverview being a county hospital. So they would chip in as well to part of those costs, because they're benefiting also from that ambulatory care. I know there's some other cities that do that. And then when I actually mentioned it to Jeremy, he said that that's how Lebanon runs theirs with them. So
So let me clarify. When you say ambulatory care, do you mean EMS, ambulance services?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It was that way here in the county 15, 20 years ago.
Oh, it was, okay.
Yes. And the entire county hospital moved away from that. So there is a history we'll have to examine.
Yeah, from what I understand, I mean, the cost savings are fairly significant to the cities that run it that way.
Then that means the county picks it up, so.
The county picks up part of it, and I think that in the Riverview, so Jeremy was saying that we get part of the revenues currently from those
We get,
ambulance runs.
and Chief can speak to it more, but if there is a run and there's insurance involved, then we do get a portion of those dollars back. So we bill the insurance company just like any of the other medical providers would have.
Yeah, and I presume, and, okay, and maybe Chief is familiar with this as well. So maybe if it's insurance, then, you know, we don't get any of that, but it goes to the hospital. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, so we did have our EMS services provided by Riverview. They were providing ALS services years ago, and they got out of that. And so we picked up the tab, we being the city, to provide that service because Riverview's not doing that any longer. So someone had to, the standard was set, and 20 years later, here we are. We actually hired the Riverview Chase medics as they were. They were running out of our firehouses for many years, and we absorbed them into us as an organization in the city. And there's still a few civilian paramedics that are on staff. A lot of those folks have since retired and taken jobs elsewhere. But we do have a few still in the city. It was a model that worked well as far as the budgeting and how we get our revenue from that. Most of it all comes from the insurance companies, right? The insurance companies decide they're going to pay a fee, and they pay their fee, and we end up writing off some of that, or we'll go after. Sounds horrible, but if they self-pay, then we'll seek payment from the individual. But we do have write-offs, and there's a lot of that. We're looking at our billing fees now. Obviously, budget season, we've got to look at that and address that. We're looking at a new billing agent, and they're running some numbers for us, and we're actually a little lower, so we can make some adjustments there. As far as getting funding from Riverview, the hospital itself, we work in conjunction with them on a few projects here or there, and they have paid for Pulse Point, helped us procure some AEDs. That's where we get our pharmaceuticals and things like that. Our medical direction is through them. So a lot of those costs are absorbed in that mutual agreement that we have working that way. But
Yeah, I'm not, and by the way, I'm not alluding to
Yeah.
the fact that this is a win for I mean, it's a surefire win. The archaic research that I've done, people are saying that it saves the city about 50% of the costs of ambulatory care within the city. And again, that may be wrong.
It would save the city in theory,
Yeah,
but it's going to cost the county, which is all of us, because
Right.
the cost,
Correct.
the total cost of a run doesn't drop. So in order to accomplish that, you know, our county, we have one of the few county-owned hospitals left in Indiana,
right.
and it is owned controlled by the county commissioners. So that would be a discussion
Yeah,
that we would need to undertake with the three county commissioners.
yeah. Yeah, good point. I mean, so the costs are shared, I guess, not probably equally amongst the hospital, the city and county, but it's something of that nature. So that way and you're right, it wouldn't necessarily make anybody's taxes go up, but it would save the city some money, our taxpayers, and ultimately we could use those funds for road improvements or
Yeah.
whatever else.
I think the key holder in this is the facility itself, Riverview and
sure.
the county commissioners. Obviously, I think it's worth a discussion. I frankly don't think that it's going to go anywhere, just because that's the way that it was done in the past. It's really kind of an older model of doing business. It is the only county hospital, one of few in the state. So I think there's an uphill battle, but we can definitely have the conversations. Yeah,
Never hurts to talk,
absolutely.
right? Yeah, okay. So just kind of in that theme, I mean, amongst us city councilors, is that, because we have this $4 million difference between last year's revenues and this year's current budget, just trying to find ways to save money. Obviously, legal expenses, that's definitely one, but then even amongst the different divisions, I mean, we talked probably in length about all the different divisions, but having that safety net built in to last year's revenues budget would give us opportunities in the future for road improvements, Board of Public Works, things that we know we're gonna have to spend a lot of money on down the road. So just wanna bring that up.
Jeremy, I have one thing I'd like to point out. We went through on August 31st, all the departmental budgets. There were staff additions proposed of 23 new staff additions. That's about 10% of what our present staff level is now. And I think we have to be very, very careful. It's easy to hire them. It's hard to let them go if things get tight. And I personally think that we've got to protect public safety as much as we can. And some of these other things are maybe not quite as necessary as that. Now, that's my opinion. But staffing is well, it's hard. It's easy to hire them. It's hard to fire them.
Well, Joel, let me address that. Obviously, with a growing population, if our citizens want to maintain our level of service, and I'm speaking very generally, we will need more people to do so. And I will tell you that when we were in the recession of 2008, this administration did have to let some people go. So it's not fun, it's not easy, but we have been through that.
And again, it's just a word of caution. You need to guard yourself in this area.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Councilor Edwards, and just so you know, we did mention public safety there. Public safety, including public works, which I deem as public safety as well. 16 of those 23 are falling in police, fire, and then there's one in public works. But Councilor Spaljarek and I talked late last week, I believe it was. She requested a simple one-page, it'll probably end up needing to be 2 pages, summary of revenues to expenses plus new additions, and she requested some of this at the council meeting as well. So the cost of living increase and what that impact is, the cost of the new people, how many new people. So we're working on that summary for you, kind of a simple 1-page or 2-page handout that lines out these things so that you can see exactly where we are from a revenue perspective, because we did have a significant revenue growth between 22 and what will be 23. And we're working on the forecast of how that revenue helps us pay in the long run as we reserve some of those funds. So as it is today, we're forecasting $6 million more in revenue than we do have in expenses with everything included that is currently proposed, roughly $6 million. It may be a little bit higher, a little bit lower than that, but we are looking at it as we always have and will.
But we've got a big payment to make out of cash reserves for State Road 32, which went from $7.5 million to 11 point something million. So we're always going to have stuff like that. That's just the world that's been created.
Sure, and just to be clear, that's not necessarily out of cash reserves. Those are road impact fee dollars. Those dollars can't go toward operations costs. They can only be capital improvement costs. And we're still on track to be able to pay our portion of that without dipping into cash reserve, if you will. That said, no one knows what the cost is until the bids come back, but we're confident with where we are.
Where are we at with our salary ordinance coming forward?
It will come forward before the end of the year, as it usually does. It's usually late October, early November, that time frame. Salary ordinance would, if we do it the traditional way, it would just increase the brackets by what the cost of living is. and then any new positions that were classified between last year's ordinance and this year's ordinance.
Okay. And the strategy right now, though, doesn't account for the GO bond you want to do?
The strategy does account for the GO
It
bond.
does account for it?
Yes, it does.
At the $6 million?
Yeah, it's 5.7, but yes. It generates $6 million in revenue between 23 and 24, or, yeah, 23 and 24. So the GO bond would create $3 million of revenue in 23 and $3 million in revenue in 24, all while still creating a decline in the tax rate. So the tax rate is still falling with the proposed GO bond.
I wasn't able to attend the meeting on the 31st, so I listened to it, all 3 hours of it. It was exciting way to spend my Sunday. I share most of the same concerns that Councilor Patton, Spolteric, and Edwards. I would ask you, please pay particular attention to that State Road 32, reserve. I think that Jonathan Nail had cited 8.6 million in the budget, and I think that if we need to talk about it, I think it'd be certainly closer to 11 million that we need. So, and I know you've been tracking it, you're on
We have.
on
and-
point,
and-
but that gives me a
on-
concern that we put the right number in the budget.
Yep, and the budget's changed and probably will continue to change, and we are updating as much as we can along the way. I still have a level of confidence.
Will we have the sustainability report ready for us at the beginning of October? That's the goal.
Certainly our intention. Yes, it's always changing, but yeah, we'll get you the most up-to-date version for sure at the beginning of October, or at least by the time the budget is introduced.
And because when we do speak about that in October, I'd like to make sure that we make it clear to everyone in the public that while our AV is increasing 24%, that sounds like an awful lot that we, the city, are getting. But I think you said that we're really only getting like 9%.
We get a capture 10. Yeah.
So and that's something I like to make sure that Greg Garitas really emphasizes at that presentation.
Yep.
So kind of use it as a little bit of an educational time also.
And keeping in mind that 10% is what we forecasted as revenues, not the 24% actual AV growth. So that's part of that strategy too. And the forecasts really largely come down from the state. So these are real numbers. They're not folks with a calculator somewhere. So, but yeah, we grow in the sustainability plan with what we think are actual numbers, not knowing that 14% delta, it stays with the state essentially.
All right. Well, then I guess, councilors, all we ask then is that you can sharpen the pencil, and when we get together again in October, let's see if we can pare it down in any way,
Okay.
shape, or form.
I would, on that same vein, I would just to reiterate, last year, when we, just so everybody knows, we pushed this budget up until the last moment every year. And then at the end, everybody says, oh my gosh, we should have discussed that. Well, here we all are. We're all sitting here. We should discuss it now. So, from my perspective, there's certain things, I mean, I don't want to see certain departments increase costs at all. And if that means shaving down those so that we can have more towards fire and safety and public works, I think that's better. Anything less than that, I'm not for it. Again, I think we have to have that safety net, and we need to cut those legal expenses and any consulting fees and things that really don't, in my view, I'm one person, add value to the taxpayers of Westfield. So just take that for what it's worth.
I appreciate that. And so just for 2 points of clarification, I guess, we do not manipulate the clerk's budget. So if she wants to reduce that, then that will be up to her. It won't be up to us. As far as the council legal budget, I sent that email out today with a snapshot of what's in there now. All you guys have to do is give me the word that you want that to go down to $10,000 or whatever it was previously, and we'll make sure that change is made before you get and all the updates are made into Gateway and the forms that are necessary prior to budget introduction. So. Okay, nothing else?
Thank you, Jeremy. Next, I have item is an update on the Public Works Projects Capital Improvement Plan.
Thank you, counselors. For the record, John Nails, City of Westfield, Director of Public Works. Glad to see everyone's here for the Public Works update tonight. Out of respect for everyone's time, I'll be fairly quick, but I was asked to come in and talk about a snapshot of where we are with Public Works, particularly related to projects that we can expect to see in the next year to 2 years, and then talk about some additional projects that we have identified that we need to identify funding for in the future. And then I'll end with a couple of quick parks project updates. So it's really 3 baskets here for transportation projects I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to start with funded transportation projects. These are projects that are in our 2023 budget with identified funding sources. And I'll start with 161st and Oak Roundabout. So with the success of 161st and Union that we opened earlier this year, a lot of the traffic that was getting congested at that signal has pushed a half-mile west to Oak Road. We had planned for this, and we had been afforded a project from the MPO to design and construct a roundabout at 161st and Oak. This will take place in late summer of '23. Unfortunately, NDOT has a project, State Road 32 over Cool Creek Bridge, that has slipped to a summer construction next year. We had originally planned to build 161st and Oak while school was out. However, we can't, or I feel like we cannot close 32, have NDOT close 32 and Westfield close 161st Street at the same time. So we're gonna come through after NDOT opens 32 to finish out that roundabout, and we'll coordinate with our schools as part of that. Quickly, other projects next year, 196th Street and Grassy Branch Reconstruction. That's from East Street to Grassy Branch on 196th. And about a quarter mile north on Grassy Branch from 196th. We're just doing some reconstruction and some widening to help improve that roadway. Expect that spring of '23 through fall of '23, so most of next year. 161st Street drainage improvements. We've got some flooding when we have heavy rains just east of Oak Road. We're gonna do some detention and culvert work there in the spring. Tomlinson Road widening has been a hot topic. We've gotten some concerns from residents in the Chatham Hills area, mainly related to Tomlinson Road being narrow and unsafe. We are putting together a project to widen that roadway that'll take place in summer of '23. And I have identified the funding sources for those that are interested on that second from the right column. Of course, State Road 32 reconstruction, we've talked about that project ad nauseum, and we are still on track for that, as well as Jersey Street extension, looking at late '23 to start construction on that project just south of 32 from Union through Cary Street up to the new roundabout. Finally, Mule Barn Road widening. It's a project that we've partnered with NDOT to do an intersection improvement and widening on Mule Barn Road from 32 to just north of the Shelby concrete plant. And that is anticipated to be late fall of '23. And of course, our Union College drainage project, Union Street College, Roosevelt, and Cherry, thanks to the ARPA committee for that project, providing some funds for us to improve drainage in that area. We expect a fall '23 start for that one. Still a lot of work on the design side to get us ready for that, but we think we can hit that date. And then lastly, 151st Street trail connection from Oak over to Cary, where the existing trail is on the south side. We've got a project that involves a bridge widening and a box culvert to make that trail connection. We are looking to do that project in late fall of '23 as well. A fair amount of design work still has to be done. Utilities have to be relocated. So obviously all these assumed construction timelines, I want to put a caveat on it that we got some utility coordination work that still has to be done, but If you thought that 2022 was busy for orange barricades in Westfield, 23 is looking just as busy, if not more so. So the next, so these are also funded projects, but beyond 2023, we have two others that have been MPO or NDOT roll call funded, actually. 151st Street Town Roundabout out on the west side of town. That is a summer 24 construction, so as to not impact school traffic. And then Little Eagle Creek Widening Phase 1, which is from 146th Street up to Shelbourne, a project that will slightly widen the travel lanes, provide bike lanes on that road, and do some curve corrections for safety on a otherwise rural and kind of twisty-turny road with some sight distance issues. So that's what we have looking out beyond 23. I want to touch on the next bucket, which is what I'm calling funding pending transportation projects. What that means is we either have or will be in the next week or so submitting grant applications for these projects. So 181st and Wheeler Roundabout, I think we all know that there's a concern at that intersection with congestion, both school and Grand Park traffic. We are going to be submitting that project to the MPO, which would be an 80-20 match program. However, we can't wait for the 5 years for those federal dollars to come available to do this project. So we've worked with the MPO to hash out a reimbursement program if we were to be awarded that project, so that we would build it as quickly as we possibly can, which I'm on the table. I have summer of 2024. We will try to do summer of 23 if we can, but summer of 2024 is probably the conservative estimated construction timeline for that project. And then when the federal funds would become available in 27, the MPO would reimburse us for that. So it's kind of a cash flow reimbursement type situation to help accelerate some of these federally funded projects. Same thing with 169th and Oak Ridge Roundabout. We'll be submitting that one in this call for projects in October. And then the Monon Trail over 191st Street. This is one that we will be submitting for funding to the MPO as well. And that's one that I think we would probably hold off until the dollars became available to construct in 2027 to help improve safety at that trail crossing. And then the last one is a new program with the infrastructure bill that was passed in Congress. It created a Safe Streets for All grant program. And in looking at that grant program, we looked at the Monon Trail under 161st Street as a project that really fits into the framework of that grant program. The deadline for submittal is actually on Thursday for this, so we are working on a federal grant application to see if we can get some federal dollars for that safety improvement project as well. I do have a note that these construction timelines are based on being awarded the grant in January of 23, which is when we'd expect the MPO to announce their award for this current call for projects.
Yeah, John, let me add that we're submitting these to the MPO, and it's all competitive across our region. So this does not mean we will be awarded any of these projects for sure. The awards are, when is that? The submittals are October?
End of October is the final submittal date, and then typically they announce award in January or February.
Okay.
So, yeah, without getting into the details of how the MPO works, it is competitive across all the other municipalities in the central Indiana region around Indianapolis. So we are competing with not just Noblesville, Fishers, Carmel, but also Greenwood, Beech Grove, some of these other communities. So the last thing on the transportation side is unfunded projects. There's a request to really show some of the projects that we've identified as needing funding so that we can get a better handle on what's forthcoming in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. We actually project out transportation plans 30 years out in the long-range transportation plan. And many of these projects can be found in that long-range transportation plan. I've gone ahead and created a suggested priority column for this. What that means is that it's a combination of discussions with city councilors, with mayor, and with my own engineering staff to try and determine what we think is the highest priority projects within Westfield of these projects that are unfunded as of today. And so I'm not going to go through every single project, but I think the big one that we've talked about with some of our city councilors is 191st Street and the need to improve that corridor, both west and east of 31 really. But I focused this the top two as west of 31. So from Tomlinson to Grand Park Boulevard as a project to widen that roadway to a boulevard section, 2 lanes in each direction, inclusive of a roundabout at Grand Park Boulevard to help facilitate flow in and out of the park. And then sort of a second phase of that project being from Grand Park Boulevard over to Springmill, which would be inclusive of a future roundabout tying Springmill, Horton, 193rd, and 191st Street together. So you can see some estimated project costs for those projects. Next on the list is Westfield Boulevard. We've already constructed Westfield Boulevard from 169th Street up to Park Street. And the Lantern Commons project is proposing to build a segment of Westfield Boulevard from the 161st Street and Union Roundabout up to the edge of their property, but that leaves about a half-mile gap in that roadway system. And we certainly don't want to build dead-end streets. I think it's important to make that connection so that we can de-emphasize Union Street as a traffic corridor and make it more pedestrian-friendly in the area. So that's kind of the third priority item. And then there's a Cherry Street Bridge project over Grassy Branch, just a couple blocks south of Field Brewing on Cherry Street. There's a bridge that exists today that doesn't have any pedestrian facilities and may be acting as a bit of a pinch point for our stream, which is creating some floodplain upstream. So this is a project that would help bring some ground out of floodplain, help some redevelopment in the downtown, as well as providing pedestrian facilities on that bridge and widen that bridge structure out for safe travel of vehicles as well. And then the last one I'll go into detail on is 161st and Springmill Roundabout, as well as the Trail Over John Edwards projects. Those are kind of sister projects. There's the roundabout at the intersection itself. To date, the signal functions fairly well. There's some pedestrian connectivity issues on the east side of the intersection that we'd like to correct, but it is still functioning. We have 95% plans for that roundabout, and there's still a little bit of right-of-way we need to acquire as part of that project before we could build it. But the trail over John Edwards is just northeast of that intersection and includes a gap in our trail network that crosses a legal drain. So those projects, I think, are fairly important from a pedestrian connectivity perspective. Several roundabouts that you'll see down the list, and then the kind of large ticket items are towards the bottom, the Springmill widening and 161st Street widening and the Town Road North Extension kind of round out that list as larger ticket items that may be important in the future, well down the future, but today, probably not necessarily the best investment of those dollars at current traffic conditions. I do think it's worthwhile to take a second look at our Springmill and our 161st Street engineering studies to make sure that those original assumptions still hold true and that we are investing those dollars wisely in a way that makes sense. The big takeaway here is there's a huge total at the bottom of this table, clearly, and there's plenty of infrastructure projects that are out there that we've identified as needs over the next 10, 20 years. And so, this is the first step in trying to look together to look at possible funding strategies to make these things come to fruition. This slide just shows you the capital improvement plan. It's not meant to be dissected necessarily. It's just a screenshot from our capital improvement plan, which is to say that it may seem a little wild out there with all the construction and closures that we have ongoing in our city, but we do have a plan in place, and our capital improvement plan looks out over the next 5 years and is truly a cash flow plan to ensure that our various funding sources are sustainable and have a factor of safety in them to help identify which projects we can do when and how quickly. So that is to say that we do have a capital improvement plan. It is a living document. We update it regularly as new costs become real, beyond just estimates, but actual real costs, so that we can see what that does to our 5-year cash flow across our various revenue streams. So just moving on to parks really quickly, I'm very excited about a park project that we have in design today and will be doing construction in 2023, and that's the Simon Moon Park, which is just north and a little east of our city services building there on 171st Street. So the Simon Moon expansion project really started several years ago with the sanitary lagoons that were existing and out of commission near our city services building. We partnered with a contractor to mitigate those to item standards, clean them up, and get a certification that they are indeed clean. And The next step of that is to create some of those lagoon areas into recreational facilities for water, really wetland and water recreation. So boat launches, wetland areas in the park, as well as some new pavilion areas and a reconfigured sledding hill. So we do have $1 million budgeted in 2023 to start phase 1, which is a lot of the earthwork that's going to be required to start off that project. And it will be a multi-phase project over time as we are able to add more of these elements that you see on the schematic as budgets become available. Some other projects in 2023, I'm excited about the Freedom Trail Playground Replacement Project. This is one of our more inclusive parks in Westfield, and we'll be working with the Mayor's Council on Disabilities for the design of this playground equipment. So that's an exciting new project, as well as the Grand Junction Plaza aesthetic ice rink that we'll be installing there in Grand Junction Plaza. So 2 projects that will have big impacts for our community and that we're very excited about in Public Works. And then lastly, since I did identify some unfunded projects on transportation, it's probably a little bit of a contentious subject, I'm sure, but the Grand Junction Plaza Amphitheater Pavilion is a project that I think is very critical to Grand Junction Plaza for our programming. It's something that during the value engineering process was removed from the Grand Junction Plaza project, but I think it's very important to get an amphitheater structure in that space to help with our programming of the park itself. So with that said, be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I've got a couple questions. Go back to that slide, John, that I think the number was 149 million on your like-to-have project list.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that all those projects, you know, as growth continues, those are just going to get more and more difficult. Could you estimate, you know, could we accomplish that in 10 years, 8 years, 5 years, 20 years? What is the timeline to be able to have the revenue to do $149 million worth of projects?
Yeah, I can't stand up here tonight to give you an exact answer on that, certainly. I will say that some of those projects were planned out and put into the long-range transportation plan probably over 10 to 12 years ago. And I do think it's worthwhile, particularly with Springmill, the Springmill projects there, to take a second look at an engineering study to make sure that that original plan of a 4-lane boulevard section is really needed over the next 20 to 30 years. A lot of Springmill, at least between 146th and 32, is fairly well developed at this point, and we have some pretty good traffic counts available to us. Before that, you're taking kind of estimated development and growth and trying to apply future volumes to understand what you need in the future. As Springmill continues to develop, I think we can take a closer look at that engineering study, and maybe we can get away with a 2-lane boulevard section or maybe a 3-lane section that would reduce some of the costs there. So I think that's pretty important, especially on some of these priorities that are lower down the list that are actually larger ticket items that that are looking out more like 20 to 25 years.
And could we get a copy of that too?
Sure, absolutely.
This report?
Yep.
Appreciate it.
I will send you guys the PowerPoint.
John, when we discussed 191st Street before, not me and you, but I think I was talking to Jeremy, the number was more like 10 to 14 million for the full entirety of what we were going to need. So seeing this number is a lot bigger than what I was told.
So the 10 to 14 may have been construction costs strictly. I'm not sure. I wasn't involved in that conversation, but these are estimated project costs. So there are additional costs beyond the construction of a roadway that go into it, and that includes right-of-way acquisition, design services, utility relocation if they have easements, and construction inspection. So there are many phases that go into a cost of a project. This is trying to encapsulate all of those costs. I don't know if that conversation was strictly related to construction costs, but there are those ancillary costs that I'm trying to convey in this document.
Okay. There's a broader discussion we haven't really had, and that should probably happen with us in concert with the RDC, as they do have at least somewhat of a surplus, at least right now, maybe not after they pay us back the Infrastructure Improvement Fund. Sure. But either we need to be not giving them 100% for every piece that's in there, and approving that at 100% rate, or we should be having them budget some of these projects that are actually in the TIF districts. So it's just something that I think we need to have a broader conversation with the RDC about, to see if we can accomplish some of these things.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if nothing else, this presentation hopefully can open up that dialogue.
Jonathan, to piggyback on that, you have applied for the MPO dollars on 181st and Wheeler Roundabout before, right?
Yes.
Like twice and been denied?
Correct.
Has anything changed? Is there a limit to how many times we keep asking?
There's no limit to how many times we can keep asking. The thing that has changed is traffic volumes, traffic counts. So without getting too far in the weeds, the type of funding we'd be going for is called CMAQ. It's Congestion, Mitigation, and Air Quality funding. The idea is that rather than a four-way stop where everyone's idling and sitting there, roundabouts help push more traffic through quicker and actually reduce some of the air pollution. And so as traffic counts go up at that intersection, your scores also improve with your application.
So is that that's a different source than we've applied for in the past?
It's the same source, but the traffic
different
counts we've
reason.
gotten recently are a lot higher than the ones we've used previously.
Thank you.
How is our modified roundabout 171st and Cary performing?
Well, actually, so I think it's done an excellent job, especially considering the price that we were able to construct that project for. So we spent about $700,000 all in on that project. That's inclusive of design costs, any right-of-way acquisition, utility relocation, and construction. To give you an example, a lot of these roundabouts that you see are $2 million. So for about a third of the cost, we were able to construct that roundabout improvement. It's been performing well. It's certainly smaller than most of our roundabouts, but that is a trend that we're seeing in roundabout design is rather than oversizing roundabouts, they call it right-sizing roundabouts. So really understanding your design vehicle and the people that are using that roundabout and designing it accordingly. It keeps speeds low. To my knowledge, other than, I believe, one potential drunk driver that ran through the middle of it, I'm not aware of any other accidents. And unfortunately, we can't design for that type of driving behavior. But I would say it's performing quite well. I understand it looks a little different than a lot of our roundabouts, but again, given the cost of the project, I'm very pleased with how it turned out.
John, don't I recall one of the big savings there is the stormwater was already in place. So
Yeah.
if we compare that to 161st and Cary, I mean, we about had to create the Atlantic Ocean on several sides, you remember? Mm-hmm. Whereas here, the stormwater, we didn't have to buy a bunch of land for stormwater, so that really helped the cost.
Well, and that's why I'm wondering if we can use this approach in certain areas again and maybe save some money.
Yeah, 181st and Wheeler would be one of those areas potentially. So where we have open ditch drainage on the side of the roads, and we can avoid an enclosed storm sewer system like we were able to do on 171st and Cary, that presents a huge cost savings to a project. So using curb turnouts and roadside ditches is a big cost savings and something we're looking closely at for a lot of other roundabouts in the city.
I have a question if I can. Kevin, do you mind going back to the slide that shows the expense for 32? And Jonathan, can you kind of give me a quick overview or a summary of what is involved in that number?
Yeah,
I
so.
think it was 9.3 million.
Yeah, that's estimated construction costs. So I included construction costs of these projects in this slide. Happy to give you guys an update on State Road 32 at a future council meeting. I will say that the right-of-way acquisition numbers that I'm seeing are still in line with the presentation that Jennifer and I gave you guys, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago with relation to construction costs. This construction cost is construction only, and that is the current engineer's estimate for State Road 32.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. Jeremy pointed out that does not include streetscape. That is for the construction of 32, the portion of the NDOT project that we are reconstructing, not inclusive of any streetscape items that may or may not come to fruition.
When you gave us your estimate last week, it was 8.6 million, and this is roughly 9.4. What,
Yeah.
can you explain the difference between those two?
Yeah, I pulled the most recent cost estimate when I was pulling this table together today. I'll take a look at the budget presentation. I do agree that that may need to get updated just based on the estimate. This is the most current construction cost estimate, though, this 9.3 number.
Thank you. Any other questions, councilors?
I just want to say special thank you for doing this. I know that we put you under the gun here, and you're a busy, busy guy, so I appreciate it. It's important to the community.
Of course, you're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate the information. The next presentation this evening is going to be the non-residential data presentation, part 2 by Caleb Ernest.
Thank you, President, members of the council. So just starting off here where we left off on the previous presentation, as you recall, the previous non-residential presentation, we discussed how the division of non-residential land was divided into lots, area that's been reserved for blocks, future development, and then areas of non-residential land that is not platted. So in total, there's over 4,800 acres of non-residential land. Of that land, 648 lots have been platted so far. That's 545 that have been approved for development plans, so they would be ready for construction, and then 103 lots that do not have approved development plans. Those are those categories in the blue. 61 blocks have been platted, accumulating just over 1,100 acres, and 933 acres have not been platted so far. So moving forward, we're going to specifically talk about this section of the chart, which is just addressing the non-residential land that has been platted in individual lots. So that accumulates about 2,800 acres. So, and again, just breaking down that about 2,300 acres have a development plan that's approved, and over 400 acres, there is no development plan that's approved yet. So 648 lots have been platted. And so as moving forward, we'll see the land use and the breakdown of the land use categories within this section of the pie. But before we jump into that, it's just important to make note of what exactly is a land use. So land use is the use of a property, or how a property is being or could be used. So land use is not the same thing as zoning. So zoning does allow for more than one land use. Zoning also allows for different categories of land uses. So zoning broadly identifies how a property can be used. So meaning that land uses are more specific to an individual type of business. So as an example, if we say that the zoning district is a business use, it could be general business, local business, historic, et cetera, a business zoning district. Within a business zoning district, multiple land uses are permitted within that zoning district, such as daycares, restaurants, schools, et cetera. And more specifically, if we look at a medical office land use, a medical office land use can contain the businesses such as a dental clinic, medical clinic, veterinary clinic, et cetera. So you could answer the prompts, what is the property zoned? It's zoned general business. How is the property being used in general business? It's being used as a medical office. And what type of medical office? It's being used as a dental clinic. It's just a hypothetical situation. So currently, the city's land use table looks something like this, where on the top of the land use table, it shows all the different zoning districts. And on the left column, it shows all the different land uses. This is just page 1 of 5 pages of our land use table. So the main point I bring this up is that the multiple land uses on the left-hand column are permitted or allowed in multiple different zoning districts. So it'd be a little premature of me to break down the land uses based on zoning district because of the overlap between so many different land uses. And just as an example to elaborate, If we look down at the child care daycare center land use, it's permitted within the multifamily zoning district, a local business zoning district, local business historic zoning district, general business zoning district, and by special exception in general office. So one land use is allowed in multiple zoning districts. So for this reason is why I've chosen to categorize the land uses into 7 broad categories: retail, office, educational institutions, religious institutions, industrial, an other category, and then vacant. So breaking down briefly into each category and the rationale before it is that the retail land use is really any business where you can purchase either a personal item or a service for a personal item. So rentals, services, and sales of vehicles, restaurants, grocery stores, convenience stores, banks, savings and loans, pet-oriented businesses, tool sales, etc. For office, it's really any business where you typically have to schedule an appointment for a service. So you typically cannot walk into these businesses without some form of prior communication. So these include design offices for architects, engineers, surveyors, medical clinics, surgeons, dental, veterinarian, realtors, law firms, membership associations, and city services. Educational institutions, it's any institution where the primary function is in education or educating. So school and admin buildings for the various levels of education, including collegiate or private levels, and our libraries. Religious institutions, any institution where the primary function is a place of worship and faith. So it includes churches, mosques, synagogues, temples, etc. So for industrial, it's really any establishment that conducts industrial activities that are similar or any part thereof industrial uses. So it includes supplying, producing, manufacturing, distributing, material handling, plants and processing, packaging, treatment, research and development, and the like. The other category is really a catch-all category for land uses that do not fall within any of the previously mentioned categories. Or it includes buildings that contain multiple land uses for multiple categories. As an example, a multi-tenant building may have multiple land uses within one building. So strip centers and malls, flex buildings, meaning that multiple uses could go into an empty building ready for different land uses. Recreational facilities, assisted living or nursing homes, conference centers and nurseries all fall within this other category. And lastly, the vacant category. It's really just properties that are vacant. So it's an empty lot, no building has been built on the property, the building itself is vacant, or the land use is unidentified for the lot or the building. So it's really just properties that have not developed and empty buildings. So again, looking at our non-residential stock, this is only for non-residential acreage. So this data does not include anything residential whatsoever. So again, of the total 4,800 acres of non-residential land, we are just focusing on the 2,800 acres. That's the blue section of the pie chart. So looking at just the area that has been approved for construction. So previously this was all of the 2,800 acres. Just the acreage that has been approved is about 2,300 acres. Looking at the division of land uses, we see that about 23% of the lots with a detailed development plan is retail, about 10% is office, 14.5% are educational institutions, 8% are religious institutions, 16% are industrial, 28% fall into the other category, and about 0.5% are vacant. So similarly, we're looking at the 427 acres now of that 2,800 acres. So 4% are retail. Again, these are properties that have no approved development plans, so they're not ready for construction. So less than 1% are office, about 3% educational institutions, less than 1% religious institutions, again, less than 1% industrial, about 28% fall in the other category, about 64% of the lots with no approved development plan fall in the vacant category. So looking at it together, so this is the entire 2,800 acreage, so this is all of the non-residential lots. 23% of all non-residential land is retail, so 10% of non-residential land is office, 15% is educational institutions, 8% are religious institutions, 16% are industrial, 18% fall in the other category, and 10% of the land is vacant. So it's a short presentation compared to my previous ones, but the final slide here is just showing a breakdown of the timeline for the presentations. There will be a final presentation at a date later determined that will basically wrap all of this together, the residential and all the non-residential data, and basically says what that means as we overlook the entire township and the breakdown of all the land and how it's divided. So at that point, the final presentation will probably be, I'll start off kind of showing the overview of it, and then more discussions based on what the data means will follow that. So until then, I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you may have.
You know, Caleb, this information is extremely helpful. Really appreciate you putting it together.
You're welcome.
Is there a way that we could take it to the next step and show us visually on a map where the non-residential lots are located, which ones are vacant, which ones have been approved, which ones have been approved and built on? I mean, that, to me, that would be very helpful from a zoning, from an idea as to where our development has located and what opportunities are still there for companies moving to the area.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that's obtainable. Just as a disclaimer up front, when we look further out at the entire township, because this data is covering the entire township, a lot of the parcels may be pixels if it's highlighted. So some of it may get lost just in that visual element, but it's definitely something that can be accomplished.
I think that's something the council would like to see.
Scott?
Yes.
So, go ahead.
So, again, to reiterate Councilor John's comments, we appreciate this. I'm wondering if we've got everything broken down here very well as far as a statistical analysis and all that kind of stuff. I'm wondering if there's a way that you can take the information clearly there was a lot of work that went into this. If you can take that information and essentially kind of parse that out so that we can take a look at, because obviously there's ongoing conversations about, revenue. How much revenue do we, can we anticipate? How much revenue do we need as a city? That type of thing. So is there a way to take a look at the way, how you've got this parsed out and kind of determine the revenue generated by each one of these categories?
Yeah, and the revenue piece, that's something that most likely will be discussed in the final presentation. That's something that's going to be a much more collaborative effort just outside myself. So myself is really just accumulating the data, mining it, analyzing it, and presenting it. So, but that is anticipated for the final presentation that I mentioned.
Okay, I would, and again, absolutely 100%, I don't want this to sound any way other than me being absolutely appreciative of the amount of work that's gone into this. I recognize this is a lot of work. That final key is really, that's where we kind of bring everything together, and that's going to be really big, and obviously the sooner we can see something like that, the better. And I know you've got a lot going on.
Yeah, I think when we started the process, again, Caleb, very, very well done. It was so we could see the numbers behind as we're talking through the budget process with the projections, what we currently have in terms of, corporate revenues from property taxes, where we're at, where we're going to be in 5 years based on the abatements and that sort of thing. So that way we will know exactly, and we can say, hey, here's our budget. We know what's coming. So, in fact, if you could even send it out previous to maybe the next presentation, so that way we can have time to kind of formalize our thoughts and questions about that.
Yeah, and that's the end goal. And when the request was made and we started diving into what that looked like, it became clear we didn't have enough compilation of data to be able to put any real numbers to it. So that's what this whole effort has been, and really with the focus that we would create something that is easily manageable and updated as we go. So as new projects are approved, then that information gets dumped in here, and we have a living, working document.
Yeah,
to
so
be
every
able to
time,
present.
a new project, hey, we have $30 million coming in, now we have 32 million, and this year 35 and 37 million. As those abatements roll off, we have this much.
Right.
That way, when we're looking at our budget, we can say, hey, yeah, fire needs this many, or they're gonna need to build, another fire station. We know we have this coming on board to pay for that.
Yeah, and that's certainly the outcome that we're searching for. This is just the data we had to get together to build the platform to be able to push it forward. It'll be much easier once we get everything ready and we can maintain it long-term.
Yeah, and again, I recognize it's a tremendous amount of work, and I appreciate the work you've done. I also appreciate the acknowledgement early on. I think with the first one was the residential. I think the comment was, we've never put this together before, and this is a great tool to have. So I think both sides are seeing that this is useful information. It's great information. We just can't wait to get to that final, where are the dollars? So that's a conversation that hopefully all this culminates, and we can have that conversation.
And I think it's important, you can take it one step further when we're marketing our city toward potential companies to relocate here. It's good that, first of all, our marketing folks are people in economic development who are trying to attract businesses here. This is a type of information I think they desperately need and can use in order to put the right spin on it to get companies to relocate here and to show the growth that we have enjoyed and it's coming already, and to point out areas where we can focus in and areas that would be open to those companies coming to relocate here. So, thank you, Caleb.
Any other questions for Caleb? Or me, I guess? All right.
Okay, moving right along then, getting into our old business category. Reminder per resolution 21-121 relating to transparency. Councilors do not need to recuse themselves, but are required to disclose if they receive contributions of $1,000 or more when voting on any actions involving one of their contributors. First item this evening, resolution 22-113, Common Council of the City of Westfield amending and pertinent part resolution 14-122. This had a council introduction on August 22nd, 2022. It's up for adoption consideration this evening. And I don't know if Jeremy or if Manny want to give us a brief overview on this resolution.
I can. It's really the efforts of Councilor Spoljarek as much as anything, but same resolution that was presented to you prior with just really one change, as opposed to the initial payment of $3 million happening before, I believe it was December or November 31st. It is now pushed to by January 15th, which will help us tremendously and avoid the extra work of doing an additional appropriation. So these two payments, or this $6 million, will be presented in the RDC budget for 2023. Assuming it gets approved, then we can just make those payments a little easier. So I appreciate that. Other than that, RDC is considering a sister resolution, if you will, at their meeting on next Monday. That has the same terms or similar terms, and that should put a bow on the process for us to be able to start moving forward.
Great. Councilors, any comments?
Fantastic. Can I make a motion to approve?
Please.
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made by Cindy Spoljarek and seconded by Jake Gilbert. Is that right? Sure. Troy Patton. Okay.
Either one.
Kim, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
Troy Patton?
Yes.
Scott Willis?
Yes.
Cindy Spoljarek?
Yes.
Jake Gilbert?
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes,
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
thank you. The next item, ordinance 22-37, City of Westfield authorizing the City of Westfield to become a member of the Central Indiana Regional Development Authority. This item had a council introduction on August 22nd, 2022. It is up for adoption consideration this evening. Jeremy, would you like to?
Sure, I can do what I can, and then if there's technical questions, Manny will have to jump in on that. But going back to the presentation by Mayor Fadness of Fishers, informing us about the Central Indiana Redevelopment Authority and the benefits of joining that, and effectively requesting that the city join it as well. We presented to you all an ordinance 22-37 for consideration. I believe it was a month ago now, proposing that we do exactly that, which is to join this CERTA, which will ultimately open us up to regional funding, most specifically right now, the READY grant. So the group that is mentioned down here, we expect the group to grow a little. Actually, it's in the resolution portion that will come next, but that's Fishers and Carmel and Marion County and various other central Indiana communities that have already joined. We are proposing that we also join the Regional Development Authority and see what opportunities it opens up for us for regional planning and funding.
Thank you, Jeremy. Counselor, questions?
I thought there was a 2-year departure clause in this if we didn't like it. We're going to be financing items which may not be located here. Which we kind of do anyhow. But
Counselor, I don't believe we are financing anything by entering it, and the region would then get a grant that it distributes to the individual parties that they fund for themselves. So
I believe it makes us subject to possibly someone else enacting construction on something though, and we would have to pay our fair share. I mean, I think even Mayor Fadness said in his presentation that, you know, even we may hire people, and that would go. I mean, we really once we join, if they want to hire a staff to be on that, I believe verbatim he said we don't have any intent to, but we could foresee in the future that we would hire people and that we would pay our fair share.
And I do believe you're correct there when it comes to staff. I was specifically talking about projects that are awarded by the region. But yes, if there is administrative staff or other fees that would come in the future, keeping in mind that all the members of the group get to vote, we could be subject to some fees there, but I think it would be pretty nominal.
I have a question specific to timing.
Yeah.
Is there a deadline to join this? Is there a deadline that if we don't join this right here, right now, tonight, is there anything preventing us from joining 6 months from now or 8 months from now or 12 years from now?
Manny, do you know?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, are you going to miss out on involving the city in certain decision-making processes at the outset?
Sure.
So that's the trade-off. But as far as I understand it, there's no, you know, if you don't do it now, you can't do it in the future.
My understanding was there's no cost. In fact, my memory's poor, but if I remember this correctly, I asked the question if there was cost to join this at the presentation. The answer was no, there's no cost. I assume that's still correct. However, almost immediately following that, there was conversation about how the expenses would be divvied, how they would be shared, whether it was expenses for staff or whatever the case might be. So though there's no cost to join, it seems clear in my mind that there is a cost to be associated with it. We don't know what that cost is or what that would possibly look like. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement.
That's a fair statement. As of right now, there is no cost. The whole program is annually subject to what the legislature annually appropriates to this program.
Sure.
That can change from year to year.
It doesn't sound like it limits it to what is potentially coming out of these READY grants or something. I mean, the way reads to me is that this RDA is a separate body that can go out and purchase land, can go do improvements, can go do all other things. It's not about a grant. Am I wrong? Because the
think
language all reads,
No, the legislature has provided this mechanism to promote regionalism. So to establish these statutory creatures that allow everybody to bandy together to be able to then present to really the feds and to request not just grant funding, but other types of funding mechanisms that are not otherwise available to individual municipalities. That's the whole point of the structure.
I understand that's
It's a part of the
the point,
structure with
but
the state statute.
but what it's saying is that they can go out and purchase and develop and do all these projects, and none of that is necessarily tied to grants. Do you see what I'm saying? Or like, say they get a federal project, federal funds for 80 million, but the region has to come up with 20 million. Are we assessed a portion of 20 million?
The mayor said that that could happen, I mean, but but it would benefit the region. I mean, although we may not benefit directly, that maybe they do it in Fishers or something like that. Because I think somebody asked him, Manny, I believe, about, I said, you know, and I don't know who it was, does it preclude us from asking for those dollars ourselves? And he said no.
No, it wouldn't, except some of the ask, you couldn't even make the ask in certain instances because it's based on regional development authorities like this.
But I think Cindy's right. I mean, I think they could do certain things and then we would be accountable for our 20%. Or
That's the way it
possibly
reads to
1%.
me. I mean, it's a separate body politic is what it says, body corporate and politic that shall carry out the purposes of the act by acquiring, constructing, equipping, owning, financing projects and facilities to or for the benefit of eligible political subdivisions under the article, and funding and developing airport authority projects, commuter transportation districts, rail projects, regional transportation authority projects. I mean, it goes on to list all these things, but it's not saying that it's limited to like where we wouldn't be responsible for
Well,
someone
you
else's.
said it right at the
debt. I
beginning
mean,
where it says under the act. Under the act is the defining and constricting clause. Because under the act means you can only do, and under these specially created statutory creatures, you can only do what the legislature allows you to do. And what the legislature allows you to do in this instance is come together to be able to ask for money, essentially, to be passed down through certain projects. Now, Troy's right, some of these projects may only go to Fishers in some instances, or one of Anderson or one of the other members, and some may only go to Westfield, depending on how it goes. And everybody would have a say in that, would have a vote in which ones you go for. And whether there's any cost-sharing structure downstream, again, that would be established through everybody's involvement. So that's the basic structure of it. But to Councilman Fry's point earlier, it's not something you have to do or you don't get to do it later. I think Mayor Fadden has said he's kind of making his rounds, and he's going to go to the county and other places next as well.
There is an assumption that all the participants will be communities of goodwill, and that's generally true in these circumstances. I have been a part in a prior time of service where there was not a community of goodwill, a community of control, period. And that's where things tend to come apart in these things. And I would hope that that kind of stuff, I think we need to do regionalization because the state's pushing us that way. But when the goodwill evaporates, then there's trouble.
So, Jeremy, I don't know if this is, Manny, if this is even a question, but so the nominal cost part compared to what we potentially could gain makes it seem like an obvious thing to do. But in the wake of the overruns on construction costs and so forth and so on, I think a big fear would just be Project X gets awarded. It's not in Westfield, but hey, it's good for the region and we can't deny that. Okay, great. But then when there's an overrun and the grant paid for what supposed to cover the project, but then, oh, we're $1 million short, and so everyone has to chip in. And it wasn't in Westfield, so paying for an employee is not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about we're holding the bag because we're part of the group, and the project really benefited the region, yes, but potentially not our city, yet we pay a little more than a nominal fee. So I'm for the structure and all of it, but that's the worst case scenario we have to protect ourselves from. Do we have an ability to say, look, it's a regional project, but since it's not in our city, we're not paying for the overrun?
Yeah, so I think, and again, I could address the hypothetical because I'm not sure how it's gonna go, but other than knowing what generally these grants and how they operate. So the grant would be, you were able to apply for this grant only if you're a regional district. Okay, so we qualify there, we apply for the grant, it's competitive, and as Mayor Fadden says, it's competitive across the country. So we're competing with Austin and you name it. So we get the grant. Money goes in and it's a Noblesville project. Okay, fine. Money goes in, money goes through to Noblesville. If the money was 10 million, ends up being 12, that would not be, unless there's a separate agreement or a separate vote by this body to somehow everybody pitch in, just by virtue of the pass-through of the grant, would not obligate anybody else.
Where does it say that?
Well, that's just the grant structure. And nowhere in these documents that I've seen at least, does it say that you have to have any sort of cost-sharing mechanism to be able to participate. If this is just pursuing grants, grants are a gift of money, essentially. And this body is able to get, to vie for those, and then once they get them, it's a pass-through.
Can you get us language that says that? I mean, truthfully, I don't like to vote on anything I don't know. I mean, I want to be able to read it.
Yeah, so if you want to
know
suggest
that.
additional language that says, hey, by signing up, we are not obligating ourselves for any shared costs,
We can opt out of,
and maybe some opt-out language, why not float that if you, that's what
Right
you
now,
want?
it has a minimum, I mean, we can't get out for 5 years.
Right, there's an opt-out language, I believe, in the statute, and in the resolution, the language is in there that the initial entry is 5 years. You can leave at any point after that with 2 years of
But it would
written
be
notice.
7 years because it takes 2 years in advance notice to get out.
I
So
think you could notice at 3 years and be out at 5, but the commitment is the first 5.
What concerns me is we're gonna have a brand-new council, brand-new administration, and we're making a decision here that is really, should be theirs. There would be heavily impacted. And I just feel a bit uncomfortable making that decision for them. Again, especially if that's gonna wind up committing them to something that I'm still not comfortable with the language, that we wouldn't be on the hook for an unknown quantity of money. So that's what's giving me concern with this as it stands.
So with that, I mean, I will remind you, you're gonna be around for another year plus, a year and a quarter. There is already money being shelled out to these regional authorities. Southern Indiana got $50 million that went to various projects. I'm certain that we can get additional information or sit down and talk to folks. I just need to know what you want to know. I can work with either Mayor Fadness or another regional development authority to try to get you that information to understand how they structured the actual grant distribution. And here's the way it works. So at least from my perspective, I don't know for sure. If the RDA is going for a grant, right, the entire region, all the members are gonna have to vote for that. So if Fishers is gonna go and get $20 million to do something, and we are gonna be on the hook for $2 million for it, I don't think we're gonna vote, yes, let's go do that. I think it's going to be, yeah, Fishers, we support you going and doing that because it's a regional impact, but you're on your own. That's the way it would structure.
I know you said you're not sure.
I'm not sure, no.
So
So what if we do that? Can I make a suggestion?
yeah,
We send language you think is not language, but ideas that you think would be good to see in here or themes. And then maybe, Jeremy, we can make a call to the Southern Indiana region. And so you can see an exact flow of how from soup to nuts it went. So that way, what I said is hopefully, borne out by that, or if it's not, you can see the differences. So that way you have both maybe protective language in there, and also you saw how a $50 million grant was distributed.
So I personally, I appreciate that, and that would be good insight to have, how it works with the Southern Indiana regional organization, but I'm still at the point where honestly, if I don't know precisely how it's gonna work, not how it works with someone else, but precisely how it's gonna work for Westfield, and precisely what our taxpayer dollars will go toward, and what kind of commitment we're making with taxpayer dollars, I have no interest in this moving forward. That's just me.
Understood, and I think we talked a little bit about it earlier, which is do we have to do this tonight? Absolutely, we don't. I think we're best suited to make a decision soon, like within the next few months, to be able to get into the CERTA and be a part of those original early conversations, so we can help guide what the outcome is. But I don't think I think we push this past October if we're going to table it tonight, so that we can get through a really busy October and start talking about it again. Plus, it'll give us some runway to try to answer some of your questions. And if you want to send those, we'll be happy to run that down.
I'm interested in knowing more. I mean,
Yeah.
because I want to know for sure. I mean, I know there's a Tommy Boy reference in there somewhere. I'm not going to repeat that, but see, I mean, you know what I'm talking about. But I mean, I just want to know.
I understand.
Councilors, can I have a motion?
I also
then?
understand the Tommy Boy.
I would just ask this, if, I appreciate you wanting to know more, that's great, but it's going to be time and money here and time and money here, and if you're really not interested in it, just say no now. That, in respect of the time it's going to take to.
I'm interested. I'd like to know
Yeah, I'd
about
like
the
to know.
contingency of cost overruns in these inflationary times. I'm not as worried about the personnel. I don't see a staff of,
5.
but I am worried about, in the wake of State Road 37 or park runs or whatever, all those, us being on hook. That's what I want to know. You asked, what do we want to know? That's what I want to know. Language that protects us from that.
I haven't made up my mind whether I'm for it or against it, because if we don't, I mean, you don't know, Manny doesn't know, we sure as heck don't know. I mean, that's not.
Yep. Just let me know what you want to know specifically.
You don't,
We'll
you
track
don't
it
know
down.
what you don't know. I mean,
Understood. I'll see if we can get some additional information. I'll be candid with you. It's going to be November before we're going to be able to,
Fine.
or I'm going to be able to engage in some of this.
that's fine.
So,
Is there somebody from the State House that could come and answer these questions, or?
I don't think we know what questions to ask, honestly, of everything yet.
Article 4 in this talks about this regional strategy fund, if I'm getting this correct here.
Where are you, in the
I
resolution?
think you're in the resolution.
Yeah. Not
You know,
sure where I
there's
did-
nobody that understands this as well as Scott Fadness. I mean, he was instrumental in
I
this,
emailed him, I haven't heard back.
in the legislation that created all this.
You think Scott, Mayor Fadness would be willing to come back and talk about it?
If you wish, I'd be happy to ask him.
So I'd like to go ahead and just make a motion that we table this for tonight.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion that's been made to table this resolution, and we have a second. Motion made by Scott Fry, seconded by Troy Patton. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeric.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay.
And since the resolution is,
It's been
Exactly.
tabled. We need then to.
I would say
move on.
table, either remove it or table it accordingly.
Just remove it, right?
Yeah, let's remove the following resolution then. Okay, can I have a motion to then remove
Do we need to do that?
ordinance,
Or do we need to have a motion to remove it?
with resolution 22-114?
Motion to remove resolution 22-114.
I second that.
Motion made by Troy Patton, seconded by Scott Fry. Kim, would you call the vote on that, please?
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Cindy Spojeric,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, thank you. The next item on North Point 2 was withdrawn by the petitioner. Moving on then to ordinance 22-06, Towns at Union PUD. This item had a council introduction on February 14th, 2022. APC public hearing on March 7th, 2022. Favorable APC recommendation on August 15th, 2022. And it is up for council consideration this evening. Caleb, Ernest, you want to fill us in?
Yep. Thank you, President. Well, you kind of highlighted everything I was going to say, so I'm just going to turn it over to the representative, John Davashewitz. So.
Thank you. John?
No problem. Thank you for your consideration this evening. For the record, John Dabashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the petitioner in this matter, Pulte Homes. Since the matter was introduced to the council, we spent a few months with the Plan Commission. I wanted to highlight some of the big changes. This was the original plan that was presented to council, included 84 units, all 3-story townhomes in that space. The revised plan, which was sent back to the full council with a unanimous recommendation from the Plan Commission, now includes 73 dwellings, which is 11 fewer. They're all 2-story in height rather than 3-story in height. Amenities have been specified within the PUD. There's a boulevard entrance along Union Street, as well as breaking up the unit counts. You'll see 4-unit, 5-unit, 6-unit buildings along Union Street, rather than previously it was only 6-unit dwellings. All being the same along Union Street. There's some variety there that's going to break up some of the additional monotony. With that, there were some additional architectural modifications made regarding 4-sided architecture, as well as those dwellings along Union Street wouldn't have any garage doors facing that. They would be facing away from Union Street. Again, we received our recommendation back in August from the Plan Commission. It was sent, I believe it had a 7-0 favorable recommendation from the Plan Commission. We're asking for your adoption consideration this evening.
Okay. Councilors, any questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have to recuse myself on this. I'm the sexton of that cemetery down there, which owns now part of or owns all of the developmental sites, so I'll recuse myself.
Understand.
And for a spirit of transparency, I've exceeded the threshold of $1,000 from an employee of the petitioner.
Thank you, Councilor Wallace. Any comments on this? Questions, comments? Can I have a motion then?
Motion to approve ordinance 2206, Towns at Union PUD.
Second.
Thank you. Motion made by Cindy Spojeric and seconded by Troy Patton. Kim, would you please call the vote, excluding Joe Edwards, please?
Cindy Spojeric,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0, 1 abstain.
Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you. Moving on, ordinance 22-31, the amending provisions of the Westfield, Washington Township Unified Development Ordinance. This item had a council introduction on July 11th, 2022, followed by APC hearing on August 1st, received a favorable APC recommendation on September 6th, and is up for council introduction or consideration this evening. And again, Caleb is going to explain it to us.
Thank you, President, members of the council. So just as a quick refresher, this is an ordinance that basically is replacing our landscaping maintenance standards in the current city's ordinance. It's being replaced with language that would require a performance bond for all common area landscaping in residential subdivisions. Since it was introduced, the edits that have been made to it have basically been adding a section in our processes and permits chapters of the city's ordinance that basically states in text what all is required for an application, how much % of the bond the procedure for pulling the bond if necessary, when to submit it. I mean, all the information has been updated since then, as well as the language within the landscaping standards. So we believe that it's ready for council adoption. Thank you.
Any questions, councilors? Do I have a motion then regarding ordinance 22-31?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Cindy Spillier, seconded by Troy Patton. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Cindy Spillier,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Our next item, ordinance 22-34, Austrian Pine PUD Amendment 1. Council introduction on August 8th, 2022. APC public hearing was held on September 6th, 2022, followed by a adoption consideration this evening. Yes. We're gonna.
Good evening, Council. For the record, Ryan Collingwood with the Community Development Department.
Brian.
The item before you this evening is a proposed amendment specific to Lot 3 of the Austrian Pine PUD, which is located on the south side of State Road 32 between Austrian Pine Way and Dartown Road. Lot 3 is the property on which Ortho Indy is currently built. This proposal seeks to modify the requirement that a minimum of 2 buildings exceed the maximum setback of the State Highway 32 Overlay District. Instead, the proposal would modify the language so that buildings may exceed the maximum setback of Phase 2 of Ortho Indy. A 21,000 square foot expansion is proposed to be located closer to the State Road 32 right-of-way line than the existing building. Additional language, the same used in the adjacent Springmill Point PUD, which permits landscaping to be modified when planting congestion or conflict with existing utilities is apparent, is also proposed. This item received a public hearing at the September 6th Plan Commission meeting, where it also received a 7-0 favorable recommendation. As such, it is ready for a vote this evening. Kevin Buckheit of Krieg DeVault is present this evening to make a brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, my name is Kevin Buckheit with Krieg DeVault. Thank you for your time this evening. Most of the information that I was going to present has already been presented. One of the underlying efforts of the current ordinance was to keep the construction on this site from becoming a soldier row of buildings. And as it turns out, the staggering of the building is happening organically on the site. And if the last 2 building sites in this section here would have to set back 120 feet plus, I think you'd end up with something that's a less desirable look. It'd be more like a gap tooth. It would cause design problems for the sites by breaking up parking spaces and to the north and to the south, and generally make the whole site work less efficient than it needs to. And the impetus to this is the construction of the Ortho Indy Surgical Center, which will be the next building to the left, and those have to be located such so that the physicians who have patients in both the clinic and the surgery center will be able to pass back and forth between the buildings with fair ease and for the benefit of their patients. I'll answer any questions if you have them.
Councilors, questions, comments? Do I have a motion then?
Motion to approve ordinance 22-34.
A second?
Second.
Motion made to approve on ordinance 22-34 by Troy Patton, seconded by Scott Willis. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Cindy Spillier,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
I need to disclose that I have received a donation over $1,000 from an employee of Ortho Indy, and my vote is yes.
motion carries 7-0.
Mr. Buckeye, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Moving on, last item under old business, ordinance 22-36, stormwater utility rate. This item had a council introduction on August 8th, 2022, with a public hearing on August 22nd, 22, is up for adoption consideration this evening. Jonathan Nail, can you give us a quick update on this? And when you do, apparently there was a change made between last meeting, this meeting. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so Counselor Spoljaric had asked for some clarifying language on the ERU rate. We have since clarified that verbiage. I think it was fine before, but we certainly made it more clear what the ERU rate will be for the various years moving forward. Wes, do you have anything to add to that? Okay.
Counselors, any questions or comments? Can I have a motion then on ordinance 22-36?
I've got a comment. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure. Let me check the section. Section 1F, there's that 3% annual increase beginning in 2028. And that's what we're getting ready to vote on is a 3%. Obviously, the increase that's before us now to get us where we need to be, which seems appropriate, but then a 3% increase annually above and beyond that. I just want to make sure everybody understands that and recognizes that that is in there, section 1F. So just want to make sure everyone's aware of that.
I thought we talked about removing that.
I had suggested it, I had recommended it, but
Okay.
The justification for keeping it in was just the economics of revisiting this and doing a rate study every 5 years to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars, actually more like $100,000 when it's all inputted. And we understand that we believe long-term inflation costs of 3% is justifiable for our utility rate moving forward.
quick question. I know it's in here and I know we discussed it. When was the last time this was raised?
So in 2017, 16 or 17? 16 was the last time that we implemented a change in the rate structure.
Okay.
Go ahead, Wes.
Councilman Fry, I took what you said to heart. So I did a little extra homework here with our billing department, Rachel Freed in customer service. We approximately have 32,500 units. So that's 32,500 people that actually pay a stormwater utility. If we were to apply the 3%, that's roughly 18 cents. Per quarter, we would pay $5,850 per quarter. That's how much we would generate, which comes to approximately $23,400 at the end of 1 year. If nothing changes, we would pay almost $110,000 to do the stormwater utility rate study all over again. Where are we going to get the $75,000 to pay for that? So I think, as it stands right now, 3% seems pretty fair if we don't have to go through this process one more time. So
I understand the case you're making. I just want to be clear, make sure that everybody else understands that what we're getting ready to vote on is a 3% annual increase.
just wanted you to have some numbers to look at.
No, I understand. I appreciate that.
Other comments? Okay. Hearing none, do I have a motion? Ordinance 22-36, stormwater utility rate.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Counselor Edwards, seconded by Counselor Willis. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Cindy Spoljaric,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
No.
Troy Patton,
No.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Moving on to our new business category. Resolution 22-117, Common Council declaring a certain area within the city an economic revitalization area, qualifying certain real property improvements for tax abatement, and setting the time and place for a public hearing regarding the same. This is for the Nexor core companies. And Jeremy.
Yeah, Kaya's out selling our fine city this evening, so you get me again. The specific parcel that would be established as an economic revitalization area, is 535 Park Street, formerly the Dynafog property that is has since been demoed and is part of the Grand Millennium PUD. And what, so that's the ERA. The development for potential tax abatement is the next core group out of Denver, Colorado is proposing a 3-story, 60,000 square foot medical office building on 4.4 acres of that parcel, which you can see defined in yellow right here. What they are proposing is 32 new full-time employees with an average salary of $35 per hour and $34 million worth of improvements on that property. You'll see that they did provide the SB1 that's been approved, includes all the numbers that I just spoke about. In case you're wondering, it's currently, the current value is $2.5 million with an assessed value of $488,000 that would then go to a construction value of $34 million. The abatement that they are requesting is, I would say, a non-standard abatement. Typically, we have the normal graduated abatement. This year, they're requesting 40% for the first 3 years for real property, and 30 years for the 30% for the next 7 years for a 10-year tax abatement. So with that, we do have the next core group here this evening that's going to first be introduced by Jim Ake, and then we'll turn it on over to next core to tell you a little bit more about the project and about themselves. So, Jim.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good evening, councilors. For the record, my name is Jim Ake, and I reside at 543 Potomac Court in Westfield. I'm here to represent and support NextCore's request to establish an economic revitalization zone and to consider real property tax abatement. NextCore is a national firm and located in Denver, Colorado, as was previously stated. They specialize in building medical facilities of the highest quality across the U.S. While NextCore is national in reach, they have a local presence along with local representatives. Our community needs have drawn them to Westfield for the next project, and with your support, we'll move their project forward. They would like to start later this year. With market pressures on interest rates, changing liquidity and construction cost fluctuations, there's a need to balance these by this abatement request. This development also helps set the stage to pay down the RDC participation in the Grand Millennium project. The new taxes from this project also will be a big help to our downtown area and the revitalization projects that are being discussed. Shared parking at night for downtown events will also be a plus for the city of Westfield. In addition, the ambulatory surgery center and medical building will be an economic catalyst, creating spin-off businesses, generating conferences with attendees staying and spending money on hotel nights in our community, and food and beverage, and bringing surgeons, doctors, and supportive staff relocations to our fair city. Westfield's return on this investment will be significant. The 60,000 square foot 3-story building will be located on lot 2 and 3 along US 31, the Grand Millennium, just down from the new library and Township office building. Each of you have been briefed individually about this project. At this time, I'm going to ask Jay Jones, our local NextCore representatives speak briefly about the design, timetable, and construction of the project. He will conclude his remarks and introduce Nedra Moran to you, who will again briefly address in details uses in the 19,000 square foot ambulatory surgery center, which will occupy the full first floor. She also will update you on pre-leasing and touch on the benefits of this facility, both in economic terms and what it means to serve in service to our community and our citizenry. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Jay Jones with NextCore.
Good evening, councilors. For the record, I am Jay Jones. I reside right here in Hamilton County, and I appreciate your time and consideration this evening. I've been with NextCore since 2017, but I couldn't be more excited to do a project right here in my backyard. My kids all play soccer out at Graham Park, have for years. My daughter just graduated and is now down at Marion playing soccer. So for me, this is just a wonderful opportunity to bring a wealth of knowledge and skill set that we have on a national platform back home, right here to Westfield. So with that being said, as Jim mentioned, we're proposing to deliver a 60,000 square foot, 3-story ambulatory surgical center and medical office facility to the community of Westfield. We feel like it's vital to the growth here in Westfield. We see demographically, and you all know this much better than I, but this is the fastest growing community in Indiana. We're thrilled about the opportunity. This construction will kick off later this year. 10 to 14 months we're looking at. We have projects in place right now and plans in place to have our supply and surplus of infrastructure, HVAC, mechanical, and steel that will allow us to be able to deliver end of year 2023 with a target of delivering end of 2023, potentially first quarter of 2024. And with that being said, I'd love to introduce our partner in outpatient integrated strategies, Nedra Moran, to talk a little bit further about the ambulatory surgical center, the operations that will take place in all of the first floor of this medical office building. By the way, 30,000 square feet, 20,000 square foot floor plates. So she will talk through a 20,000 square foot ambulatory surgical center and what that entails, but also on the first floor, the ancillary and complementary services to the surgical center's operations, all on the first floor. And Jeremy, if you don't mind bringing up that'd be fantastic. Thank you. So now I'd like to introduce Nedra Moran.
Good evening, councilors. For the record, my name is Nedra Moran, and I too live in Hamilton County. And I'm, as Jay said, I'm as equally excited that I'm doing a project in my own backyard. It's very, very nice. And this one is going to be an outstanding project for the citizens of Westfield. This is going to be a 20,000 square foot freestanding ambulatory surgery center that is going to be presenting a whole new group of independent practitioners here in your community. And they will be a wide variety of surgeons, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. This center will be fully licensed and accredited by our state associations, the Department of Public Health, and then from the National Association that actually accredits all of these different types of surgery centers around the United States. Freestanding ambulatory surgery centers have been around since the end of the 80s, and they came about because they provided a very fine service for the patient that had a surgical procedure that really didn't need to stay in the hospital overnight. And that's exactly what this center will provide to the citizens in the Westfield community. We intend to make sure that this particular facility is a fully operational facility from the standpoint of also the surgeries and then all of the supportive entities that we need to support those patients and the surgical procedures they're going to have. For example, on the first floor, as Jay mentioned, we will have a full-service radiology department that will have an MRI, it'll have CT scans, mammograms, every other type of x-ray that we need to have. We will also have a full operational laboratory. I've been in healthcare for a long time, ladies and gentlemen, and one of the problems that we are experiencing in healthcare right now is getting lab reports and getting x-ray reports back to the physicians when they need them. And this facility will have this laboratory here that will be able to get that to the surgeons immediately. The other thing that we will have in this particular facility, unlike any other center in the United States, so you can be very proud of that, we will have in the operating theater itself a frozen section laboratory. What that means is when we have to have, let's say for example, a cancer patient, and we have to have a frozen section on that tumor, it will be done in a matter of 1 to 2 minutes, and the doctor will have his answer because they're all going to be right there in the same surgical suite. As you can see by this diagram, we will have 4 primary ORs. We will also have 3 procedures noted up there in the upper right-hand corner. The procedure rooms are going to be for things that don't have to have general anesthesia, but they still do need to be in a sterile area in order to have that procedure done appropriately. Excuse me. Things such as gastrointestinal procedures, some stem cell things, some bone marrow things. Those things will be done in there. We also have a full-service preoperative and postoperative area, and then additionally to that, we will have what we call a sit-up pre-discharge area. Patients, once they come out of anesthesia, we want to make sure that before they are discharged, they're able to ambulate appropriately, that they can take some fluids and they can have a little bit of crackers or whatever, and we know they're going to be all right by the time they return to their homes. We will also have everything in this facility to do all of the sterilization of all of the equipment and the supplies that we need, cleanup area, storage of all of our own gases in this facility. So you can see it is a fully operational facility that we have here for the city of Westfield. Our surgeons will represent all of the various types of surgeons. We have GYN, we have podiatry, we have many of the other things too. We also have some new things that are not being done in other areas, but the Centers for Medicare have finally said, yes, those are procedures that can be done in this type of facility. We have cardio procedures that are going to be done. You've heard of people that have had to have ablations or had to have devices put in, pacemakers, that type of thing. This will be done here in this facility. The other new thing that is not usually done in a surgery center is interventional radiology. And we have interventional radiologists on our staff, and they will be doing those procedures as well. Additionally, stem cell transplants are one of the newest things in the medical profession today. And there are very, very few places that you can get this done. We are going to be bringing in a doctor, and he has already agreed to come and has signed his letter of intent and will be in the building to do stem cell transplant. And he and his group are the only group in the United States that has been approved into their 3rd study by the FDA, clinical studies. So we're real pleased about that, and what looks like within 2 years, we'll be taking that to insurance companies, which we're very proud about the fact that we're going to be involved in that. Additionally, we're going to have some people who specialize in bone marrow, and they will be doing bone marrow procedures there. These are for patients that have blood dyscrasias, patients who have cancer, etc. And many of these procedures can be done in the procedure room, but many of them also have to be done with an anesthesiologist in one of our major operating rooms. And so we will have that there as well. The physicians that are coming are all extremely excited about it, and many of them are presently located in places other and around your community. They see the need here in Westfield too, and so they are relocating to our medical office building, and they are going to be making this their primary place of operation for the patients. So, I think there's going to be a great benefit to that, because now you're going to have your physicians right here in the local community, and the patients will not have to travel outside the area. Additionally, one of the things that we've been able to do in some of these procedures, we're going to be using robotic surgeries. And when doing this, we have now partnered with a couple of national companies. One is one that has a new procedure with regards to certain type of mesh for people who have had inguinal hernias that have gone and are no longer holding up. And these people are going to, they've actually moved their national training director already to your community. And we will be doing training sessions there utilizing the surgery center. And they will be bringing physicians and all of their associated assistants in their offices here to be trained with the robotic laser and with that particular type of product. And that will be done over weekends usually, but we will also have some that will be coming and staying and actually performing some things with some of the doctors that are on our staff, some of the general surgeons that have been utilizing this. So we think, again, this is going to bring a lot of attention to what we're doing, and I think it's also going to bring a lot of productivity for the city of Westfield with regards to people staying overnight and utilizing the facilities here in Westfield. Additionally to that, we already have some physicians that have talked to me about wanting to come in and see our facility and some other types of things that they want to do, and they may very well bring their practices here to Westfield. And these would be people coming from Florida, from Missouri, and from Illinois. And we think, again, that's going to be a very good and fine addition to the facility. These surgery centers, these centers go without saying. They provide a level of efficiency for the surgeon, but more so, it's a very family-oriented process, and it's a very efficient process. So the people, when they come in, they know they're going to come in and they're going to be out of our facility, usually within a 3-hour period. Sometimes it's a little longer, depending on what they're going to be doing. Sometimes it's actually a little shorter. So we think that this, again, is a very fine thing for the community and for the surgeons that are going to be here. Other than that, it's just going to be a wonderful thing. The building itself will have many of the surgeons there that are going to be, actually all of them are going to be, we're using the facility, are going to be in the building. And we also have some of those surgeons that have already put their homes on the market in other places in and around Indianapolis. And they are coming, and they have already, some of them, signed to have homes built right here in Westfield. And I would be happy to take any questions that you have.
I don't have any questions, but I do have one comment. Thank you for the way you structured the tax abatement. It contributes to the community instantly as opposed to down the road. I really do appreciate that. So.
Thank you.
I do have a question about the resolution itself. It says the proposed project will be located, oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong spot. It says that it's 30,000 square feet on approximately 5 acres. And I know that we've talked about 60,000.
Yeah. The building itself is 60,000, and it's comprised of 3 floors, 20,000 per floor. The first floor will house the surgery center, which is 20,000, and the remaining 10,000 square feet will house not only the radiology and the lab, but also, and I apologize, I forgot to tell you, a wound care center that predominantly deals with patients who have long-term wounds, such as diabetic patients, et cetera, and that'll take that whole floor.
Okay, I think we just need to update this resolution to reflect that.
Okay.
So thank you, Counselor. I don't see exactly where it's at, and I must have missed it when I was proofing this earlier, but clearly a typo, and we'll get it addressed for.
It's in the whereases, actually.
For when it comes forward for consideration here in a few weeks. Yeah, I see it there. Whereas, fair enough. Thank you for the catch.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions for us this time? This being a council introduction, I appreciate your time tonight. Would ask for your support of these 2 resolutions on October 10th, but we thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Appreciate it.
This is easy, Jeremy, I can address. The next one is the confirmatory, that's a companion resolution that can only be considered after and if the initial declaratory resolution is adopted and the hearing has been had. So
So there's
you
really.
can deem it introduced.
Thank you, Manny. We will
Sure.
consider it introduced, and we will hold a public hearing on that at our next meeting on October 10th, following adoption consideration on the 24th. So, again, thank you all. The next item, ordinance 22-38, Osborne Trails Phase 8 annexation. Council introduction this evening, followed by a public hearing. Ryan?
Thank you, President. Good evening, Council. For the record, Ryan Collingwood with the Community Development Department. The item before you is a 100% voluntary annexation request for 60 acres generally located on the west side of Horton Road and north of 193rd Street. The parcels in question make up the Osborne Trails Phase 2 PUD. This item is noticed for a public hearing this evening and has been properly noticed and advertised. It will be eligible for adoption at your first October meeting, where the fiscal plan will also be presented. The petitioner is not present tonight, but I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We will then open the public hearing at 9:10. Kevin, any?
No cards.
No emails, no cards. Okay. Let's give it about 30 seconds here. Okay, we will close the public hearing at 9:11. Councilors, any comments or questions regarding the annexation? Okay, this item will then be up for adoption consideration on October 10th, in our next meeting. Moving on to ordinance 22-39, Aberdeen annexation. Council introduction this evening, followed by public hearing.
Good evening, Council. For the record again, Ryan Collingwood with the Community Development Department. The item before you is a 100% voluntary annexation request for 153 acres, generally located on the east side of Horton Road and south of 199th Street. The parcels in question make up part of the Chatham Hills PUD. This item is noticed for a public hearing this evening and has been properly noticed and advertised. It will be eligible for adoption at your first October meeting, where the fiscal plan will also be presented. Again, the petitioner is not present tonight, but I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, it requires a public hearing this evening, so we'll open the floor for public hearing at 9:12. Kevin, do you have any cards, emails? Thank you. Again, let's give this about 30 seconds. Okay, the public hearing is closed at 9:13. Councilors, any questions, comments? Hearing none, this item will be up for adoption consideration on October 10th. Our final item on the agenda this evening is ordinance 22-40, Wheeler Landing PUD Amendment Market District. This has a council introduction this evening, September 12th, and will be followed by an APC public hearing on October 3rd. Kayla Burness is going to explain this one to us.
Thank you, President, members of the council. So this is a ordinance that is suggesting a few modifications to the Wheeler Landing PUD in regards to the Market District site and only that site. Specifically, there's some landscaping items such as foundation plantings and street trees, as well as text that is addressing the outdoor merchandising display. So those are really the only items that are addressed. Not sure if the petitioner plans on presenting at all. Yeah, a short presentation from the petitioner.
Good evening. Thank you for your time and attention tonight. We sincerely appreciate you having us here. My name is Adam McGurk. I'm with Giant Eagle. With me is Pat Avolio, our Senior Director of Real Estate Development, You have a busy agenda tonight, so we didn't want to contribute to that and make it worse. But we did want to take this opportunity to let you know that we did apply for the PUD amendment, as Caleb just briefed you on. We will be going through the public process, and that includes coming back here for a detailed presentation and to answer any questions you have. Having said that, though, I did not want to miss an opportunity to stand here before you and say how excited we are to make our market district a part of your community. We're truly looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilors, any questions?
Just have one question.
Yes, sir.
Are you going to have quality cigars in this, in this, like you do in Carmel?
I would say it's a little early to say yes or no to that, but we are excited for all the opportunities that Westfield presents to us. This is a site we really are looking forward to.
You would make me smile if you would have quality
Well,
cigars.
you made me smile tonight, so it's a win for both of us.
We can always count on Councilor Edwards to add a little levity to the conversation, so.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, okay. We'll look forward to hearing more about that at the APC hearing on October 3rd. At this time, do we have any residents who wish to address the council? Kevin, do we have any cards? Oh, we do?
Good evening, Wayne Wheeler, 20889 Anthony Road. The citizens, I think, have more questions now than we had 2 hours ago in regards to the North Point 2. It happened quickly. We're not sure exactly what happened. We'd like some clarification from either Manny or Mr. Todd. Where does the project go from here? What is the APC vote? Is that where we stand? Can they bring this back in 6 months, 12 months? Can we get some type of clarification from staff?
Kevin, it's my understanding that they can come back in 3 months. Is that, can you?
Yeah,
elaborate?
a different project can be filed as soon as 3 months from
Okay.
now.
So the same exact project, when can it?
6 months.
So 6 months for the same exact project, 3 months for any other project on the same ground?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, residents?
I guess I'm James Hogan, 20275 Day Spring Court. My one question is whether or not this withdrawal, does that have to be, I mean, coming this far, is that something that can be allowed? Is that something that council has to vote on to allow it to happen?
No,
No.
the petitioner itself can do the withdrawal. They kind of control that aspect of it. So that withdrawal notification, I guess, that somebody got is, that's all they needed to do. And then there's nothing to vote on. And then it goes back, it reverts back to whatever the rules in the Unified Development Ordinance are, which Kevin knows better than I do. I think 3 months is right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sure.
Additional residents, comments?
Linda Nass, 1122 East 161st Street. I had a question on this recommendation on the Austrian pine amendment, that in the documents tonight, it said on September 6th, the motion was made and passed to send a negative recommendation to the city council regarding this petition. That was at the APC, and it was signed by Kevin Todd September 7th. So was it a negative recommendation? I just want clarification. I'm sorry. Right here, this one. This is the certification. And see down here where it says, is that incorrect? Okay, I just thought somewhere it should be clarified, because it was announced that it was a positive. Thank you, that was it.
Thank you, Linda. Do you have any comments from the clerk treasurer's office this evening?
No, we do not.
Okay. City council comments. Let me recognize Councilor Spaljarek first.
All right. Let's see, the APC met September 6th. We did approve amended rules of procedure, which we will now be having. Our second meeting of the month will be more of a workshop educational session instead of actually handling business. And we are also now going to have a plat committee. And those are changes that were in UDO too, but I mean, this actually accommodates those things as well. We approved detailed development plans on the consent agenda anyway for the Guidepost Montessori Daycare on Springmill and the Market District in Wheeler Landing. And I just wanted to point out, we had a lot of folks who live in the area of the villas there, Springmill Villas, and this is 173rd and Springmill approximately. There is concern with the way that it was platted. Basically, the commercial lots that are available to be built on kind of access their lots through the subdivision, through the residential area. That is the way it was designed. You know, this is not something that wasn't known ahead of time, but it has caused a lot of concerns. And so I just wanted to bring that up because we had a lot of people in attendance to talk about that, but ultimately it did meet all of the terms that it needed to meet for our standards, so it was approved. I-Beach 31 at Graham Park PUD was discussed. There were some problems that the planning commissioners at least felt needed to still be addressed with architecture and landscaping. So the petitioner is continuing to work through those, so it's not back yet, but will be. The UDO amendment concerning the landscape bonds was forwarded with positive recommendation, which we had tonight. The two public hearing items were recently introduced. It was the Austrian Pine PUD amendment and Ortho Indy, and the UDO amendment concerning floodplain. And so those were the public hearing items. And just a quick update, redistricting, we have a little issue with our precincts, and it turns out that when we realigned Springmill, something wasn't updated, and now we have an area where two precincts should likely meet in a corner, and instead we have right-of-way of Springmill. So no parcels are impacted there, but it is actually an area where we probably should have updated that. In all honesty, I don't know the process involved in all of this, and this is, I think, back in 2009 maybe. Hard to say, but I think the state does this in their files. It's confusing me, but anyway, working with the county to try and see what we can do because we are in our redistricting phase, needing to get that done. So I just want to provide that update.
We're hoping to have that resolved prior to the October.
Yes, and we hope to introduce our new map, hopefully, that we'd like to be considered the first meeting in October. So we're done.
Thank you. Councilors, additional comments?
Go ahead, Troy.
Sorry, Scott. I was just going to say, obviously, we don't have a finance committee meeting. We can do one. If we want to talk about budget, we can do it in the evening or whatever in October. The other thing I would like to introduce, either at the next one or two meetings, is a discussion on term limits, not only for city council, but for mayor across the board, similar to what Evansville has done. I think it's something that we need to look at. I think it's appropriate, and we need to have a discussion about it.
Okay, thank you, Troy. Any other comments?
I've got one thing I'll just throw out there very quickly if I can. Obviously, a good part of our conversation tonight dealt with the budget, and obviously got a lot of people working very diligently to bring forward an appropriate budget. I know we've had a lot of conversation about, sharpening our pencils where we can. I also know that we had some conversation tonight about, the growth of the city, and, we're growing. We need additional support. Obviously, that makes sense. I don't know, and I'm just going to throw this out there as a point of irony, take it for what it is, whatever it might be to you. I don't know if anybody recalls. I think it was about last year at this time, the city spent a couple dollars for a report and investigation, if you will. I think it was Baker Tilly. They did some research for us and dug into a few things. I don't know if anybody recalls that or not. It was, I think it was mentioned here in this building once, maybe twice. And there were a lot of things that it seemed to be that there was disagreement on. But one of the things that I thought there was a lot of agreement on at the end of the day was kind of how they assessed what we can do moving forward. One of those things that they looked at was staffing. And just for what it's worth, I'm going to run this down very quickly. Administration, they reported that they were slightly lean, clerk treasurer, slightly lean, communications, community development, fire, informatics, police, public works, those were all adequate, and human resources were also slightly lean. Just for what it's worth, take that for what it is. Maybe, again, this is just an indication that that report wasn't everything that it was meant to be. Maybe they were off here as well. Maybe not, I don't know. Just something to think about. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Councilor Fry. Any other comments? Hearing none. Mr. Mayor, comments? None. All right. Well, everyone have a great couple weeks, and we'll see you back here in October. Thank you.
You're not getting out of here without...